Hello everyone, this is Peeps recording in Hydroneer today, and I want to expand on the computer systems that I built in the last video to create a warning system that's going to be useful to identify when a counting computer has reached its alerting threshold. So in the last video, I demonstrated how to create these computer systems, and as you can see, I've actually created 6 of them side by side. And these ones are a little bit different. So in the each one of these segments that's created has 4 different lines, whereas the previous ones had 3 in the examples. This is still the exact same. It's a counting binary clock that goes down the line. This hasn't changed. Over here is a reset line where all of the lines reset when this has reached its 0 value. And there is a reset toggle that goes all the way down, and then under the ground resets and shuts off this valve that is hooked up to a clock all the way down there that's outputting once every 2 seconds to send this reset down. What's different here is that I now, instead of having an elbow out here to a programmable number, I actually have a T and an elbow. So I actually have 2 programmable numbers on each one of these clocks because I want a warning threshold and an error threshold. So if you think about the number of wrenches thrown out of a hopper, I want it to warn at 15 and error at 20, or warn at 18 and error at 19, so that I can have it perform different actions or just give me an error light, which is what we're going to be working on today. And so these counting computers are set up in such a way that when you have them initially going, let's actually sleep so that we go through the night, and we'll look at the flashing red warning light as we sleep here. We're going to reset it, and while it's resetting, it actually turns off. But these counting computers have a value that's constantly changing between 1 and 0 every time the button is pushed. And originally we had it set so that it would send out either the 1 or the 0, but then a validator hook that would prevent it from sending out the 0. We actually now want the error threshold to send that 0, and I'm going to show you why that is the case in a little bit. However, then for the warning and then for the reset, we don't want that 0 to be sent. Once we have reset everything, the light is going to turn green. And then, as we push this button, we want that light to stay green until we reach the warning threshold. So if I push it once, that light goes down, but we still want it to stay green. 2, 3, 4, 5, still staying green. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now we've switched over to a warning, a flashing yellow. 11, we're going to stay at flashing yellow because the error threshold for this is actually set at 12. So when I push this again, it's going to switch over to the error threshold, which is now at 12 and gives me a flashing red. So let's see how this actually works. I'm going to reset everything so that it goes back to green. So up here, each one of these values is then going to, once it has output a 1, or in this case a 0, it's going to output a value up. Because the reset line also sends a value down, I don't want anything to accidentally send back down to the reset switch, so I put a diode at the reset line so that it does not accidentally send a value down. So that's what we got here. So a 1 has the possibility of coming up. There's never a 0 possibility because we have a validator hook down there. So 1 comes up, and then there's a diode there, so the diode can never send down. So we've got a 1 that comes up here, and it opens up this valve hook, which has connected to a bus line which is constantly sending a green signal. How is it sending a green signal, you ask? Well, over here we're sending the RGB value of 0 red, full green, and 0 blue, and that is multiplied, that's this gate here, it's a multiplication gate, by a switch that's constantly sending a 1 value every 1 second. So this is just always on green, and it's being refreshed every 1 second and sent off. Over here we have a red value that's being sent off or through a multiplication gate. However, this is being sent a 1 value every 1 second through a flip-flop hook, and the flip-flop sends it between a 0 and a 1. So we'll always get either a 0 or a 1 coming through here. And so if we get red value times 0, a 0 outputs, and a red value times a 1 outputs. And so we get a flashing signal through this red bus line. And then yellow is red and green output, and again, because we want it flashing, we have a flip-flop hook here being sent and multiplied through, and so it sends this, we have red, yellow, and green bus lines across the top. So these valves open up, and because the signal is constantly being refreshed before the valve, when the valve opens up, the signal is refreshed, pushed through the valve, and then sent over to our light bulb that's on this side. And so we've got the valves that open up. In this case, green is open when a 1 is sent. It will close if it ever receives a 0, but since we can never send a 0 through this line, a 0 never comes through. So that stays open until the warning light triggers. So the warning light sends a 1 up through here. We have a relay, or a diode, so we're never going to get a signal pushed back up through here, so we can ignore this T for right now. The 1 gets sent up and opens up this valve. Now the 1 also goes down this T, which has this diode here to push the traffic that way. We have a validator hook, so it says no zeros, but we've got a 1, so we can ignore this hook, go this way, and the flip-flop, or the flip hook. The flip hook says if it's a 0, send a 1. If it's anything other than a 0, send a 0. And so it sends, because we're sending a 1 through, it sends a 0, and it goes this way, and it shuts that hook down. So the green is now closed, the yellow is now opened, we get yellow flashy. And then the same thing over here, that once the red opens up by sending a 1, we get that opened up. We get no 0, send it through that way, flip it to a 0, and then close that. Block the 0 from sending down this way, so the 0 doesn't travel down over there at all and mess with that by opening up the green. So this is closed, this is closed, this is open. Now, if it's flashing red, and then we push it again, so right now it's at 12, we push it to 13, that's just going to turn black. So it turns the light off while it's between the error number and the reset number, which is fine, because once it hits the error number, we're going to be turning off other components, so it's not going to be sending any other wrenches through anything. We would prevent it from basically sending any additional components through. So I built another one of those over here. It's the exact same setup. The only difference here is that everything is kind of in line. The build site is not symmetrical, and so I had to push things in a little bit, but it just gives me more room as I work down in this direction, hopefully until I get to this tree and I don't have to cut anything off. So, how do we build this? Well, we're going to start with some elbow cables. That's a flip-flop, or a flip hook. There's my elbows. So the elbows are going to come up. We've got 1. We've got 2. There's nothing on this one because that's the clock or the counter itself, and then that's the reset line. We've got 1, we've got 2, and the reset line. So then we can do a straight cable here, and here, and here, and then I want to set up the diode right away so that nothing goes back down the reset line. Okay, that all looks good. Now, this line is basically going to go and then come up, but we are going to have a T cable right at the end, and then because of limited space, this one actually is going to tee up. So let's get our straight line through here. Okay, and so that the straight lines are the 1 signals that come through that open up the valves. So we don't have to do anything special to those. Those are going to be exactly as we have kind of programmed them to be. However, we do have the T's that we're putting in. These T cables are where we're going to put in our special hooks. So if I take the straight cable, 1, 2, and 3, we do an elbow there, and an elbow there. We have our validator, which should go there. We have our diode, which is backwards. So that's now pointed in the right direction. And our flip hook, which flips that signal. So, and if a 0 comes through, it's blocked, but if a 1 comes through, it flips it to a 0. Our straight cables, we can then continue on. Now we can do a T here as well, but we don't have to go up, we can actually go over, because we have that extra room thanks to the counting computer clock or system in the middle here. I'm going to run out of straight cables in a moment. So I've got 3 there. So I've got a flip. We got a diode. And a validator. Okay. I can do another T right there, and an elbow right there. And then the last elbow that we're going to do is going to come from that straight, straight, straight. Two, one. Okay. So the next thing that I need to do is I need to get the bus hooked up to this, but I need to refill my straight cables in order for that to happen. So I'm going to go do that, and I'm going to sleep, and I will be right back. Alright, it's morning. I have restocked up my straight cables. Let's get to building this. So straight cables are here. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to get our valves hooked up to this. So to do that, we need to put our cables down first. So 1, 2, space, and space. I will eventually grab the right one. So there's the valve. Alright. And then to connect to these, we need to use T cables where appropriate. So remember, it's red, yellow, green. So we have red on the first one, yellow on the second one, nothing on the third one, and green on the fourth one. Everything else gets filled in with straight cables to fill in the gaps. And that is connected, or that is the bus extended. We also need to put in our connectors to the bus, so that's going to be elbow, straight and elbow, and then 2 straights and an elbow. So let's get our straights in there, get our elbow lined up. Put it in the right spot. And our elbow is there. Okay. So now if we avoid falling electricity, open this up, green is coming out, open this up, yellow would be coming out, open this up, red would be coming out. Now when we get down to the end there, I'm actually going to not extend these out, but instead of using T's, I would use elbows and just cap these off properly. If I wanted to, I could do what you would normally expect to do with cables, which is use corks instead of something like a crimp that would, properly cap a electricity cable. But this is Hydroneer. We use corks to plug cables. And that's just how it is. Let's hook up our lights. So I didn't do it on the second one. We can do that now. I will also do it here. We need a T to, against the red output, a T against the yellow output. We need a straight that covers the gap between the counter and then an elbow that fills this out. And so basically each one of these segments is individual from the rest of it. So the bus is all hooked up and together, but each one of these segments is part of the individual counting computer. We don't want the lights all hooked up to each other down the stream. That's just going to cause problems, so we want them separated out. Now if we hook up the straight cables and the lamp, you can see that there's actually nothing coming out of the lamp right now, which is actually expected because none of the valves are opened up. So like I said, if we open this one up, we get flashy red. And if I open this one up, we get flashy yellow. And if I open this one up, we get solid green. Eventually I'll take my smacker and I'll smack all of these down so that they don't accidentally get picked up or moved around. But if we go down here, I don't have a button to move all these around. I'm just going to open up the reset valve so that the system recounts itself all the way up. So that's 2, and then this is 3. I'm going to do the same thing so that it continuously just counts itself up. I don't have the warning or the error lights set to a value at all, so we should eventually just get a green light as our output for everything. So if I watch this, you can see green, yellow, and red are all opened up. Because those aren't actually set values. I would need to go and set them in order for them to take a value. So this is where I would go in and I would configure the switches to read a value of like 15 or 18 or 20, because right now they don't. So the only ones that do are the ones on the very end here, just from initial testing. But that is how I would set up the lights, and eventually the lights are going to be part of a control system that I've got set up or got planned for over here, where I'm going to be able to see what my entire inventory system is going to look like, both for the hoppers as well as the smelters, and how much of all the resources I've got, and be able to recall things all from Control Center that's going to be built right around here. So I am really looking forward to this build, and this is an excellent addition onto the logic component of it. That turned out to be a relatively easy aspect to add on to it. So I thank you for watching this video, and hopefully some of the concepts that we talked about in here are things that you can include into your build. Have a wonderful day.